Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Welcome to Brilliance Business TV, conversations with leading experts in business. I am your host, Mark Stephen Pooler. We have a wonderful guest on the show today, David C. Olcott, and we've got a really interesting book to talk about as well. So I'm really looking forward to a conversation with David. We are streaming live on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. We're also on the E360 TV network. We're also on USA Global Radio and Television Network. We're also on Android, Fire, Roku, Amazon, and many other platforms. We're also on Business Innovators Radio Network, and we're also on mspnewsglobal.com. I think that pretty much sums all the platforms we're on. So let's bring in our incredible guest for an incredible conversation. Hi, David. Welcome to Brilliance Business TV.
My goodness, man, you are everywhere.
Yes, we have just become an IMDb accredited show as well. So all the show, most of it's up there now, but we're getting all the other things on there. So you will get a credit on there as well, David.
Expect my residual.
Get your money's worth. So, David, I'm really looking forward. And let me just be clear, David hasn't paid for this interview either. He's my guest because I wanted to have him on the show because he's really, really successful. And he's friends with my friends, Mark Victor Hansen and Crystal Dwyer Hansen, who also have been on the show. David, I'm really looking forward to a conversation with you. Before we get started on talking about your book, just share a little bit about yourself and what you do.
So let's see where to begin. Really taking a look at it from, building samurai success. Samurai loosely translated means in service of others. And early in my life, I learned that if you really want to live the greatest life possible, living a life from being in service of others was the way to go. So samurai perfectly translated to that, my personal vision for what I really wanted to be able to achieve. And the most important thing about the company that we have, and I'm a steward of, is about finding ways to take spiritual energy and make it practical. And that's what we do for business owners. And when I started off in the world of politics and banking, I thought that was the way to change the world. And what I found, man, was that if you really want to change this place, you got to speak to business owners. Business owners are the way to change things. Politics was definitely not a way to be able to do that. Banking was not a way. They really like things the way they are. But business owners are different. They really do want to change things for the best. And helping them get there is what we do.
Yes, and bringing spiritual energy into business is really, really important as well, because a lot of people can just be focused on business without bringing the spiritual side in it. So it's really great that you're doing that. Just share a little bit about the book and what your inspiration was behind the book, David.
So Swords of Illumination is the book, and the inspiration was that pretty much the characters in the book are parts of my life, if you will, kind of stuff. And one of the leading characters, Tom Henderson, is this picture of success, right? This person that's going along in life. They have the kids, the wife, the white picket fence, the dogs, and mountains full of debt. And I was living this image of being very successful, but I wasn't feeling that, man. I was not happy. I was angry at the world. I was angry with God. I was angry with every single person I met. I put on a nice face, but I was really angry inside. And I was like, man, this can't be the way this place works. And I absolutely knew, I had this faith, I should say, that a loving God would not put me here without some resources. So I had to go to work. And so while I was busy creating this life of image, I had to start taking a different path. And thankfully, I got into that path by reading some just fabulous books. One of those had to be Conversations with God. And Neil Donald Walsh has been a mentor of mine for the last 25, 26 years kind of things. And I really have been able to find a new way to take that spiritual energy, put it into this physical realm, and use both of those cooperatively, not just using my ego like I was using in the past. I can start using my soul to really bring a new vision, new idea, new solutions to a very problematic and violent place, this physical plane.
Talking of the ego, David, when you're going on a spiritual growth journey, and especially when you're going to different levels, the ego can fight you as well. Have you ever had an ego backlash where the ego is like fighting to survive because you're obviously going to a more spiritual level?
Yeah, I totally agree. As a matter of fact, one of the most interesting words that we've created here in this physical plane is the word called or. You can use your ego or your soul. And in my spiritual journey, I found a new way to replace the word or with the word and, right? And in the book, we talk a lot about this. When you take how to use your ego and your soul to be able to create a new you, well, there's actually 4 elements that you could create, the 4 pillars: your mind, body, soul, and ego. And integrating all 4 of them into a 5th element, who you really are. And this is this language we use as spiritual being. Remember who you truly are, remembering all these things. Who you truly are is divinity, Mark. You and I are both divinity. Everybody on this planet has come from that place. But when we're here, we get to do something very unique, very special. And we get to create something. As a matter of fact, it's the only thing I've been able to find that we truly get to create in this physical realm, which is who we say we are. And the most successful people are dedicated to creating that identity and living that identity. This level of congruency is remarkable. And you see this over and over. When you know the secret of this, you start looking at this physical plane, like, how is that person successful? And they're just a jerk, because they're being congruent with who they say they are and what they're doing. And so when you start seeing that level of congruency and start seeing those patterns, this place starts to make a lot more sense than it ever did before. And really focusing on not only the business, but also the book is really reminding people of how to use that technology that we uniquely have as human beings.
Interesting. I know I suffered with, like, my shadow side, I would call it, because everyone has a shadow. And what I realized is you can't reject that part of yourself. You have to give it love and accept all parts of yourself, the negative and the positive. And it's only when you integrate the shadow and give it love and accept it, you can really calm it and integrate it into, because at one point I was not accepting it and rejecting it and kind of abandoning that part of myself because I didn't want to face it. But you have to embrace it and love it and accept all parts of yourself as well.
Beautifully said, man. As a matter of fact, that's exactly the same journey I found. I found that same answer to what you just said, is the integration of those 4 pillars, right, is the secret of this congruency. If you just take, and the second part of that is that if your ego uses you in this physical realm, you're going to have a very different experience than if your soul uses you. But what if I use my ego and my soul to create who I am? And how does that change the experience? And that's the adventure I'm on. And that's the adventure within the book, about giving people a new opportunity to deal with the levels of chaos that exist in this physical plane with a very different viewpoint of solution.
I love that. And what was the reason to set it in, forgive me if I'm not pronouncing this correctly, feudal Japan and the story of a samurai?
Because of the word samurai and the background of this truly being in service of others, it just seemed like a natural format to be able to do this. Now, I've been studying martial arts most of my life. I studied the martial art of Aikido, which is the art of the samurai. And just having that ancient ability, because what I really want the reader to remember is this. This is not something new. The sequencing is new. The idea might be new, but this technology is very ancient. And so having that ancient tone to it was really important in the knowledge base for the reader, because the masters have been saying these things over and over again for thousands of years, not just hundreds of years going back to Japan, but thousands of years. And that's a really great remembrance that if we're really going to change the planet, we don't need to learn new information. We need to apply what we already know.
And everything comes from within as well, David, as well. We have all the answers within us. And I like this question, actually. Talk about the concept of creating your destiny rather than discovering it.
So one of the things that I found was that in all the movies, all the music that I love so much, there was always this philosophy of You were supposed to discover this destiny. You were supposed to discover who you are. And I did that for as long as I could because it wasn't working. And so I was like, well, what if there's another approach? And I just started being a student of another approach. And a lot of those other approaches were based upon this idea of when you are here, the thing you get to create is who you are. And that creation of who you are is what attracts your destiny to you. So it's not about discovering your destiny. It's about attracting your destiny. And successful people do that. It's the first thing you have to work on is creating who you are. And when you create who you are, the rest of it takes care of itself. So that's the magical portion of that. Now, within there is some complexity and some sophistication, of course, right? That goes, well, that sounds so easy. Well, there's some work to be done. And the first thing to understand is that what we're really talking about is that we're attracting things to us. We're manifesting things from us from two portions of our brain. And 5% of that manifestation is coming from our conscious part of our brain. So, Mark, you and I are having a very conscious conversation here, but we're not manifesting at the level that our subconscious does because this is constantly on. It never stops. And in that subconscious part of our brain, we know that here at Samurai Success in the world of NLP called programming. This programming drives everything. So the real choice point about programming is that I get to create that programming either consciously or unconsciously. And I get to choose a couple different sources of that. I can choose my soul as a source of that information, or I can choose my ego from that place. And those will create very different experiences based upon which I choose. So as you can see in this physical realm, a lot of us have been choosing to create our programming from our ego. And that's what you see in this place. And that's the challenge with solving problems in an ego-based reality using ego-based programming. It's very difficult because Einstein said it's best, right? He says the problem or thought or energy that it took to create the problem is not the thought, energy, or concepts or thoughts to be able to change that problem. So we got to go to a different source. So our other source is our soul. And being able to connect to that is what we really share with our clients about how to get through all that ego stuff, start seeing things that are bigger, broader, bigger than you kind of stuff, and being in service of others. And then use that source as this new source of programming that then starts creating and manifesting for you.
It's just like a journey I've been on. I've done so much work on programming with hypnosis. I've had NLP. Nice. I've done so much work, David. And I can't say it's an easy journey. At times it can be a challenging journey, especially when you're changing an identity as well, letting go of your old identity to become that new version of yourself. The old identity doesn't want to die, and it's a process. But it's so true. Everything comes from programming, and it all starts from when we're about 7 years old below, isn't it? A lot of it as well.
Well, it's the same research that we have as well. Between 0 and 7 is where most of our programming is dominantly created. And that's created from different sources, right? Well-meaning people and not so well-meaning people in your life between those ages. But imagine that. Think about that for a second, as you know so well on your journey, that if every subject in my life has already been predetermined by my program between 0 and 7, then I'm just reliving memories. I'm just reacting and responding. And holy crap, that starts to show up as true, because that's exactly what happens whenever something happens that triggers me. I actually go back to that 6-year-old, that 5-year-old, that 4-year-old that said, this is what you're supposed to do in response to this event. There's that way to approach life, and it creates a lot of benefits and a lot of consequences. But there's a different approach, one that you're on a journey to. And I love that. So it must be your followers as well, because finding that you can actually recreate that, even at my age, over 50 years old, 57 years old, I can recreate that and not be hooked or responded to when I was like a 4-year-old. I can do it as somebody older, someone mature, somebody with more resources, more capacity, more experience. And that's the way I want to approach life, instead of getting hooked and then, responding or reacting to something. I want to consciously move into it about how I want to express myself in this new moment of something that may have happened in my past, but I want to do it in a brand new way. changing that programming changes all of that.
And that's how you know you've changed, when you react differently as well. If you react in the same old way, that still means you've got work to do.
That's that feedback loop, right?
What is the symbolism behind the yin and yang in the Samurai Success logo?
So right behind us, of course, you can see the logo as well. It's Samurai Success. What's interesting about that is that in the Western philosophy, we have this two sides of the same coin concept, right? There's heads and there's tails. So that really promotes this, whether it's either this or it's that. And so we approach life as I can have this or I can have that, but they're mutually exclusive. And that creates conflict within itself. So the yin yang symbol for us is what we originally understood the concept to be. The symbol is about this and that, because on the surface of the yin yang symbol is both yin and yang. So they're both on the face of that. So it's kind of expresses instead of or, it's this and that. And when you take and into solution thinking, of getting into this idea of how do I create solutions with stuff, and you use the word and as opposed to or, it totally shifts your perspective about how to solve things. What's about this and that can I solve, making this work? And that's a powerful ally of solutions, because that's what we're here to do, is create those solutions to problems that exist.
Well, we all need to create solutions rather than problems, David. What is the difference between an event and an experience?
The difference between an event and an experience. So on my journey, I've definitely found that my ego wants to control things. I don't know how your ego does it, but mine, man, loves to control. And so what I was really upset about was, why were these different things happening to me? And it got me into this place of being a victim. So when I was able to start discerning rather than judging things, it really shifted. And was a big part of that. So the experience that I'm going to have is really based upon my internal programming. The events that are happening to me, through me, around me, aren't something I'm in control of. And this is where we get kind of confused, because I can't believe, somebody just ran in my vehicle and why did this happen to me? You do not get to control those events. Because, we always look back and say, well, if I just left 2 minutes later or 2 minutes earlier, I would have missed that whole thing. These events are actually attracted to you, but they're not being controlled by you. What you have control over is your experience of those events. And the control over the experience of the events actually comes from your programming, how you structure that, how you're going to approach life. That's why you see people being very consistent about half empty, half full kind of glass philosophies.
It's very, very true as well. And I think when you do the inner work, you learn the meaning you attach to things as well. People can give totally different meanings to the same thing, and one can be really catastrophic and the other person's can be really positive. So we get to choose the meaning we attach to what we experience, which is pretty much what you just said as well, David. I've really enjoyed having a conversation with you, David. I would just like, before we close the show, firstly, maybe just share a little bit more about the book, who should grab a copy, and what do you hope people take away from reading the book?
Well, the big premise, and very selfish on my part, to be honest with you, is I wrote this book for me. I definitely know that if I'm going to come back to this planet, because I know I have a sense about I've been here before, that if I'm going to come back here, I wanted a guidebook about how to help me sooner in life. So my experience is personal, but to share with the rest of people, when I start talking to people about it, we have a lot of the shared same experiences. So if programming is the key to that, what are the elements of that programming? And we call those the 12 swords of illumination. And in book 1, you learn the first 6 ways to approach how to actually change your programming to start experiencing things brand new in this very chaotic world. So let's imagine being business people, right? We go into a room of opportunity and also of chaos. If I can stay in a resourceful state by going in that room, remembering who I truly am, staying resourceful, not being in scarcity, but staying in abundance. If I go into that room of opportunity, I can see that opportunity a lot better than I'm in a non-resourceful state or if I'm in scarcity. So if I want to see a world of opportunity, I can program myself to look for those and attract those things to me. That's the programming. So in the Swords of Illumination, it starts to illustrate what are the elements of that software, that programming that you want to take a look at. So the thing that I really like to be able to have people take away of is that people are not here to discover who you are. You're actually here to create who you are. And because of that, that destiny is then attracted to that creation.
I agree totally. I love that. And I think that's a great way to close the show, David. David, I know people can connect with you at samuraisuccess.com. That's samuraisuccess.com. Is your book on this website, or do they go to Amazon, and who should connect with you to the website?
Yes, it's actually on our website to be able to connect to Amazon, or it's actually just came out in audio. So we're actually on the Apple and on Amazon for audio as well, for people that are on the go, want to be able to get something in your car or on your motorcycle, like I love to do. I like to listen to books on my motorcycle when I'm way out in the middle of nowhere. So yes, you can contact us at Samurai Success or Amazon.com or Apple.com.
I would encourage everyone, especially those wanting to bring spirituality into business, to go to samuraisuccess.com. That's samuraisuccess.com. David, thank you so much for being my guest today. I thoroughly enjoyed having a conversation with you.
Thanks so much for having me, Mark.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for Brilliance Business TV, conversations with leading experts.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.